Hey guys, thanks for coming back and watching another video. This is a third part of a three-part series about succulents. The first part was about speeding up the growth of your succulents. If you want to, go back and take a look at that, and I'll link it above. The second part was about watering it the proper way to make sure you don't have any problems with your succulents through incorrect watering. And the third part, we're going to talk about propagation. Propagating your succulents is a great way to get free plants. I love propagating plants because you get all the plants you want at no extra charge. So the perfect time to propagate succulents is spring and early summer. That's the growing season for succulents, and that's when you want to take it. Now you could do it in winter, you might succeed, but your success rate is going to be a lot higher during those two times of spring and early summer. Now an important note about taking a cutting or a leaf or a division is to make sure you choose a healthy mother plant, unless it's some type of really sentimental plant and you just want to see if you can keep it alive and it looks like it's yellowing, browning, or it's really dehydrated and you think it may be at the end of its life cycle, then you may want to try it. But if you're just trying it just because you want to propagate or duplicate that plant, make sure the mother plant is healthy. Now, one of the things you're going to need, or a few of the things you're going to need, is you're going to need a really good succulent potting mix. You don't want to use general topsoil, and I actually make it even more well draining by adding in some turfus, which is basically a product they use on baseball fields, and it's very light clay is what it is. It's baked clay, and it helps with the aeration and the drainage. Also, I put sand in it to help it with the same thing, with help with drainage. And so that's an important thing to remember, is you want a really quality soil. Also, you're going to need a good pair of scissors and a misting bottle, and this is one of my favorite misting bottles. I talk about it all the time, but it's really a great product. It saves me a lot of hand work when I'm having to mist everything in the greenhouse in the wintertime. I just go around and spray it. If I'm using neem oil or water, whatever I'm doing, this little device helps me a lot. It's made by Solo, and I think I have 3 of them around here. So these work really well. I highly recommend it, and I'll put a link to it at the bottom. Now, one thing I always talk about if you're using a cutting tool is to take some Listerine or its generic equivalent that you can find at the dollar store and spray it on your cutting tools if you are using the tools to do any cuttings for your propagation. Remember, you want sterile tools because you don't want to contaminate one plant with another plant's disease. So you'll want to do that over and over if you're using the scissors for different plants and different reasons throughout the greenhouse. Make sure you sterilize it. That'll save you a lot of heartache. So there's 4 ways to propagate your succulents. One is leaves, cuttings, offsets, and seeds. And so I like taking the leaves and just starting a new plant from that, but there's a lot of different ways you can do it. One way is with aloe vera. I'm going to show you this in a previous video. I put this together about how to take the pups from aloe vera plants, and you can see these 2 small pups over here, and I believe this was a pup as well. The mother plant is still outside and doing great. So if you know how to do that, or if you want to know how to do it, I'll link the video to propagating aloe vera plant, which is a succulent as well. Now, as far as taking leaves from the plant, you'll want to use healthy leaves that are plump and look like they have a lot of water in them. Also, you'll want to take the leaves from the bottom of the plant rather than the top. So you want to go down to its lowest point where you can find a healthy leaf. Now I want to bring you in a little bit closer so I can show you how to remove a leaf and some other methods to get the leaves to start sending out roots. So I'll bring you in a little bit closer and we'll just do a very close-up shot where you can see exactly what's taking place. Now the way you remove a leaf is you're going to gently wiggle it from side to side until it comes off. Now this one is pretty easy to remove, this particular variety, so I'm just going to wiggle it from side to side until it cleanly comes off. We want to make sure we get as much all the way down. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm probably out of shot there. I'm trying to make sure you're in the shot. You want to make sure you get it all the way down to where it comes in contact with the plant and just gently remove it like that. Now this is a leaf I had removed a few days ago. I'm trying to make sure it stays in focus, but you can see there's already roots forming that quick. I think it was less than a week ago, and it's already starting to form some roots there. So that's the amazing thing about succulents, is how much survival ability they have. So anyways, that's how easy it is to propagate some succulents, is that you just remove the leaves and you start the process as I'm about to show you. Now this is the leaf I had just removed before I showed you the one that had the roots forming. You're going to want this end of the root to have time to callus, so you don't want to bury that. You want to give it 2 or 3 days for that callus to heal over, so you will prevent any rot from happening. You're going to allow this particular leaf to heal just a little bit before we go on to the next step. Now, as far as burying the leaf, you don't want to do that. You just want to set it right on top of the soil. You can see there's just soil to root contact right there. I'm trying to make sure that's in focus. But just set it there and give it some time, and the roots will begin to form in the soil right below the leaf. Just remember that you want the soil to be lightly moist, not waterlogged, and you want this to be a well-draining cactus mix with the additives I've mentioned before, which is the sand and the turfus. If you can't get them, I'll put the links in the description. But that's the way you do a leaf. You just put it on top of the soil and let it do its magic. These plants have an amazing ability to send out roots just from sitting on top of the soil. Now, the second way you can do this is you can put the leaf that you've just taken and let it sit in water. That's an amazing thing too, because you think there's going to be too much water. And I'm just going to fill this cup right here as a demonstration of what you can do. And I'm going to allow my heating tool, my hole making tool, to cut up. I use this in plastics a lot. I talk about this a lot on the channel, but it's one of these things that I use in the garden all the time. It's not really made for gardening, but that's where I use it. So here on my earthquake table, if I can keep from spilling this water, I'm going to put the lid back on there. This is just a plastic dessert cup, and we're going to make a hole big enough for the I think I'm cooling the temp of my cutting device off a little bit there, but I'm just making it a little bit larger so we can put the tip of the leaf and allow it to touch the water, only touching the water where the roots are at. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to let this plastic cool down just a little bit before we go on to the next step. Now, I had to reposition the hole just a little bit bigger so the tip of this will fit into the hole. We don't want the thing we don't want our leaf sitting in the water below just where the roots are going to form. So I'm going to carefully put it in there. It's in contact with the water. We're going to watch this very carefully over the next week and make sure roots are actually forming, but that's how you start a leaf directly in the water. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fill a tray with our cactus and succulent soil, and I've added my extra 2 amendments that I like, sand and the baseball field turfus, and I think those 2 things really help with holding a little bit of moisture, but it also improves drainage even more. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to place the callus leaves. These leaves have had a chance to sit out. We're just going to set them in the base in contact with the soil, and we're just going to spread them out a little bit so they have a chance to start sending out roots. And so that's going to give it plenty of time. We're going to, and that one's backwards, we're going to put these on top of the soil and just give it time to send out those roots, and just kind of put them at an angle where they're able to send out the roots directly into the soil, and give it some time. That's the main thing. Just remember, it takes patience to allow the roots to start forming. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to mist the soil ever so lightly, and I'm using my solo sprayer to do that. I'm not going to water this with a traditional water. I'm just going to make sure the soil is moist. Okay? And so that's the only thing you need to do. The next thing will be just waiting a few weeks, and you'll see roots forming. Just give it about 3 weeks and you'll see roots on all of these leaves. Now, once your roots are formed, you can gently remove them from the soil, very gently, and you can put them in their own pots, and you can stand them up and allow those roots to form, and you'll see new plants starting to offshoot these leaves. Before you know it, you'll have a whole new succulent growing in a small pot. Remember, don't use too large of a pot. This doesn't have to be a large pot as this one or this one. You just want a small pot, maybe a 4-inch pot, nursery pot. Now, the next propagation method is going to be a stem cutting. We're going to look for about 1.5 to 2 inches on this particular plant. Most plants you can get away with 2 to 4 inches. You're going to remove all of the lower leaves here. Just carefully pull them off. Not too easy in this plant, but just try not to damage the stem. That's the main thing to remember. And you can save these leaves if you want to create entire new plants with the same method we just shown. And I'm just going to remove a lot of these lower leaves and move on to the next step. Now, we've removed about 1 inch or a little bit more than 1 inch off the base of that. Now, obviously, I haven't had time to do this because I just took the cutting, but you want to allow a couple of days for that to callus over so that will be ready to go into the soil. But let's imagine a couple of days has passed and we're ready to put it into our soil. Now, we're going to put it into our cactus succulent soil, that mix, and we're just going to put about 1 inch into the soil, and we're going to give it time to form some roots, and that should be forming roots in about a few weeks. Just give it time. If you gently tug on it and you feel some resistance, you know some roots have actually formed. Now, when you put this in there, you can lightly, ever so lightly mist it, but you want to wait about a solid week before you give it a significant watering. Now, the next method is one I previewed previously. I said is in an aloe vera plant. I made an entire video, and I think I've already linked it, so I won't link it a second time. But these three aloe vera plants were actually offshoots or pups, P-U-P-S, of the mother plant. And that's the next way of doing a succulent, is they'll grow at the base. Now I'll show you this one. I'm going to come around to the camera and show you, but even a plant as small as this one, I actually see a pup or an offset forming here, and that could be taken off very easily and create a whole new plant. I'll do that in just a second. Okay guys, this is the plant I was referring to. You can see an offset forming. I don't want to get too close to the camera. I want you to be able to see it, but that's an offset or a pup forming at the base of this very small plant. But that's how easily they are to find. You just look at the base of the plant. When I bought my aloe vera plants, I saw the pups in the store and I thought, oh, this is great. I'll have 3 or 4 aloe vera plants from the price of one. Now, removing these offsets are really easy. All you have to do is just remove the soil around them, and you can use scissors, but usually your fingers are pretty dexterous enough to pull it off. So you're just going to gently remove it, and sometimes you will actually find roots, as these do. If you look closely there, there's actually roots. If I don't damage it here, there's actually roots already on this tiny offset. So this is a whole nother plant ready to go into a container, not a big container, just a small one. But that tells you when you see those offsets or pups, almost said pups, you can see there's a new plant there ready to go into its own container, and you'll have 2 plants for the price of one. So guys, I thought this little tiny pup that I've taken would make a great micro scene for the desert. So I'm taking a shohin or mame pot that I usually use for bonsai, but it's been sitting in the shop for a long time and hasn't had a use. So I'm just going to carefully add some succulent mix. Got a large piece there we need to break up. I think it's a piece of wood that somehow got in there. Not sure how that happened. 2 pieces. And so we're going to add that, carefully spread it around, and we're going to take our tiny pup and put it to one side. Go ahead and plant it, and that is actually a complete living plant. I'm going to add a monster-sized stone next to it just to kind of give the impression that it's out in the desert. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some soil to give it more of a desert look. And I just love miniatures, so this is a great way to do it. If you like miniatures while this plant is growing, it's something enjoyable to look at. Okay guys, I'm going to add some aquarium gravel, and you can get this at Walmart or online. I think I bought it at both Walmart and Amazon, but it's just a standard gravel, and to me it looks like something you might see out in the desert, and it will keep the soil from washing out. I'm going to carefully put it all the way around the edges of the pot and give it the feel that we're looking at a desert scene somewhere, a giant boulder out in the desert with a small desert plant growing next to it. And so we're going to lightly mist it with our misting device here, carefully not adding too much water to it. And so it has the feel of a desert scene you might see, and that pup will continue to grow and it'll look great next to our giant boulder there. Now, the last method of propagation with succulents is really not my favorite because of the time consumption, and since I have so many succulents already, I can use one of the other methods. So this is a method you can use if you can acquire some really good seeds. All you got to do is get a tray, put a seed starting mix on there, lightly press the seeds into the soil, and once you do that, you're going to lightly mist them. Not a heavy watering, just a lightly misting. Now, depending on the variety of the succulent you've planted, it could take weeks or it could take months, and that goes back to why I like to start with a mother plant rather than trying to start from seed. Now, once the seeds are big enough to remove, move them on to their own pots, but be very careful because the roots are very gentle and they can break off very easily. Now, you want to put those seedlings in very strong light, but not direct sunlight. Remember, these are seedlings, they're new, and they can get scorched and burned very easily. Now, as with the larger plants, you want the soil to dry out as well between watering, so don't overwater. Don't make the same mistake you can make with the larger plants. Don't allow the root rot to happen is what I'm trying to say. Also, as with the larger plants, you want to use a balance, like a 10-10-10 fertilizer. A slow release fertilizer would actually be best. Now, the seedlings can be slowly introduced into the sun, maybe 30 minutes to an hour a day, outside or in a garden window. But remember, you want to do that slowly. You don't want them sitting there for 3 or 4 hours in the hot noonday sun because it will scorch them and your seedlings will most likely die. Now, since these are seedlings, you're going to want to make sure that they have a lot of humidity. Whether you use a small humidifier or a tiny plant fogger, you can get those at most hardware stores. I'll link one of those as well. But the thing to remember is you want to mist, just lightly mist, to keep that soil from completely drying out. You are dealing with seedlings or cuttings, so it's a little bit more important to keep the soil a little bit more moist on the top, maybe watering or misting every 2 to 3 days, just a light mist to keep those roots from drying out. So that, guys, that is everything I know about propagating succulents, and I think that will help you get a head start on keeping your succulents alive and reproducing them and able to multiply them, so you'll have plenty of succulents for years to come, and you'll never have to go to the store and buy another one, maybe another variety, but the ones you have, you'll just be able to duplicate those. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you have a comment or I misstated anything, please let me know below. I'm often known to do that. Have a great day.